Now, last time we left off, we were talking about cellular respiration. And if you remember in cellular respiration, what ends up happening essentially is we're taking food and we're converting that food into ATP. So one of the ways we start that is we talk about glucose and how you convert that into ATP. What we're going to talk about today is almost exactly sort of the opposite of that. So what we're going to talk about now is how you can actually build that glucose. And then that glucose can then be used in cellular respiration to make ATP. So we're going to talk about plants a little bit here. And so if we look up here, you see some leaves on a plant. And if we look at those a little bit closer, you'll see under a microscope that, like other living things we've talked about, there are cells. And if we look at the cells at a closer level, inside the cells, we've talked about this before, are these structures called chloroplasts. And a chloroplast is the part in a plant that contains the molecule called chlorophyll, and the chlorophyll is what basically ends up making a plant green in color. So you'll notice that the chloroplasts, kind of like the mitochondria, have these extra layers of membranes, these outer membranes and inner membranes, and then inside there are these little discs looking things called thylakoids. So we have these thylakoids in here. We're going to talk about those and how they're involved with photosynthesis. Also, you notice on the plant, if you look on the underside of the leaf of a plant, you often see these little holes. If you look under a microscope, those are called stomata. And those are going to be important for getting gases in and out of a plant, such as CO2 and O2. Okay. Once again, like we did in photosynthesis, what we really want to focus on is how we look at what goes in and what comes out of the reactions. So in photosynthesis, we'll really talk about two stages, the light reactions and the dark reactions. In the light reactions, which are also called the light-dependent reactions, what we essentially do is we take sunlight energy and we use that sunlight energy to make this molecule called NADPH. I'll walk you through these once again, but as we did with photosynthesis, with cellular respiration, what you want to do with photosynthesis at the end is you want to make sure you know this chart. You want to know what goes in, what comes out, and what was our main goal. So this is going to be essentially the important details of it as we walk through the steps. As before also, there's different names for them. So you'll see the light-dependent reactions or the Calvin cycle, and so you want to know the light reactions and the dark reactions. But once again, other books will utilize different names for those. You want to make sure you're aware of that in case you come across it. Now, first of all, we'll talk about light energy. So light is a type of energy, and there are different forms, of course, of energy and different kinds of light that you might have heard about before. This little chunk or little piece inside here is what we call visible light. So this is the type of light that you're familiar with that typically you would see coming from, a light in your room or lights from the sun and that sort of thing. And those lights are associated, that light is associated with different wavelengths. And the wavelength denotes how much energy and how long or short that wavelength is, and that is also coordinated to a particular color. So what's important with this is to realize that when you see something, let's say you have the light coming from the room, for example, that's what we call white light, and it includes all of these colors. But a plant or anything that's a particular color, such as a plant being green, a green plant is green because it reflects green light. So green light is not absorbed, but rather it's reflected in this case. On the other hand, red light and blue light on this end are more absorbed by the plant, and so what we'll see, we'll do this in lab, but it turns out that the red light and the blue light is what's most important for photosynthesis. Okay, So here shows you a picture of what's sort of going on with the chloroplast in the inside. Here, remember the chloroplast is where the photosynthesis is going to take place. Okay, next thing I'm going to mention here on the light reactions is this particular molecule called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a very important molecule. This is what it looks like. You don't need to be able to draw it, but what you do want to know about chlorophyll is that it is a light sensitive molecule. It's a light sensitive molecule, and what happens is that means that as light, certain types of light hit it, it's able to absorb certain levels of energy, certain amounts of energy. And what ends up happening is this chlorophyll, when light shines on it, it's able to store temporarily a little bit of energy that's in the light, and that becomes significant for the light reactions. The next thing is we'll talk about a little bit about how that chlorophyll molecule fits into the grand scheme of things of this idea of having a photosystem. So what's going to happen is we have our sunlight, and the sunlight is going to hit your plant, and inside your plant is the chlorophyll molecule, and a unit of energy that comes in a form of light we call a photon. So a photon is a unit of energy that is able to generate and put the electricity into this, or to put the energy into this chlorophyll molecule. And what happens is, in the case of chlorophyll, when a photon light hits it, when a light from a photon source of light hits it, what happens is it pushes an electron to a high energy state in that molecule. Now in this picture they show it sort of shooting up in the air, and it's not really that it jumps up in the air, but rather it's at a high energy state. So chlorophyll is one of those types of molecules. It has energy stored up in the bonds, and when you hit or put light on it, the bond, the chemical bond, the covalent bond in part of the chlorophyll puts the sharing of that electron in a more high energy state. When you remove the light, that energy would escape from that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have, here's our thylakoid membrane. So once again, it's a phospholipid bilayer. A photon of light is going to hit that, and it's going to pass that energy into the chlorophyll molecule to the very center of that. And what's going to happen is there's a thing called a primary electron acceptor. The primary electron acceptor is a protein that's going to grab a hold of that high energy electron. This is essentially kind of like what happens when we talked about cellular respiration, and we did the electron transport chain, but instead of the NADH passing the energy and the high energy electron, the high energy electron is pushed to a high energy state by using a photon of light or a little bit of light to do that. So this whole thing is what we call a photosystem, and that will then move us into the next part, which is where we'll talk about the light reactions and the dark reactions. So this has been more of a little overview of the parts of photosynthesis, and now we'll go into each step.